Hi again, it's Tom Tradup, the contributing editor of All Israel News. And with me is Joel Rosenberg, our CEO and the founder of All Israel News. Joel, what an interesting day it has been. When you were talking on our last meeting, you indicated that there was a possibility that there might be some kind of coalition unity government involving Benny Gantz and Prime Minister Netanyahu. And in fact, you broke a big story today on that very subject.
Yeah, we All Israel News did break the story mid-afternoon here, Israel time, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had in fact reached an agreement with one of the main opposition leaders. I would argue the main opposition leader, former Defense Minister Benny Gantz. Gantz right now is so popular in Israel that if elections were held right now, Tom, Gantz would be elected president, or sorry,
Really?
prime minister, and all of his party and all the other parties that are aligned with him would be the next government. So it's a pretty big deal, actually, for Gantz, who could be prime minister, to enter the government of his chief rival. But Gantz's political brand has been Israel above all. That's why he entered in an agreement with Netanyahu several years ago, and they formed a government. Netanyahu didn't keep the deal, actually. They were supposed to rotate Netanyahu 2 years as prime minister, and then Gantz was supposed to take over. Netanyahu didn't keep his end of the bargain and sort of blew up the coalition, and then we went back. And then Gantz said, I will never serve with that guy again. But in this case, the polls are very, very strong that the Israelis want a unity government because, as Abraham Lincoln famously said, of course, citing the Lord Jesus Christ, a house divided cannot stand,
Right.
right? And so I'll just say this: Hamas has accomplished in 5 days, maybe 6, what no Israeli was able to do all year, and that is unify Israel's political leadership and the country as a whole. We are unified to go into this fight.
So this is really, with all of the bad news that has come out of the past few days and even today, this is a sign of hope.
It is, because, look, this is the thing that Israelis most wanted, unless you were part of like maybe the far right in Israel. They said, listen, we believe that many Israelis think that judicial reform is important, but they did not like the plan that Netanyahu and his team unfolded. And that's why you saw all those huge protests, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, Israelis, turning out every Saturday night, not only in Tel Aviv, but all over the country, demonstrating and saying, no, military reservists, fighter pilots, people of all kinds saying, but the army, the soldiers were saying, we're not even going to go back to our reserve units. We're not going to serve for what they feared was going to become a dictatorship. Now, we can get into whether it really was or wasn't, but that was the fear that something, that Netanyahu was trying to rush something through, and he was trying to force something that didn't have a broad consensus. And so the argument was, hey, slow it down, set that thing aside. Let's have a conversation, maybe even have a unity government. But there seemed no path forward. Netanyahu has some very, very controversial, very unpopular members of his cabinet, and it seemed like there was no way to unify the country with those guys in the government. And Gantz said, I'm not going to join a Netanyahu government just to bail him out, unless he gets rid of these guys. And of course, Netanyahu couldn't say that, or he'd blow up his own government.
Sure.
But Hamas has changed the calculus entirely. Gantz, very much to his credit, said, all right, I will do this, but Mr. Netanyahu, I ask for this. We need to create a war cabinet that you, Mr. Netanyahu, the current defense minister, Yoav Gallant, and me, meaning Benny Gantz. Gantz, of course, being a former defense minister, 36 years in the Israeli army, former chief of staff of the Israeli military. So,
Yes.
I don't want those guys in the room when we're making strategic and tactical decisions. I'm not asking you to kick them out of the government. That's something that another opposition leader, Yair Lapid, wanted. And so Lapid is not joining this new emergency unity government. But Gantz narrowed his demands, and Netanyahu, to his credit, realized that that was worth it. Netanyahu's poll numbers are low, and now he's got this terrible situation. And it's not just a political calculation, though. If you're going to go into a very messy, bloody, long war, that's needed, but it's going to be unpopular, right? It's going to be painful. You sort of want your opposition to be with you making those decisions, right? But it's not just that. It's that Netanyahu is a military man himself, fought in the most elite combat unit in Israel, was wounded multiple times in combat. His own brother was an Israeli hero who was killed rescuing Israeli hostages. So Netanyahu knows what war is, but to have the most popular, most experienced general, former chief of staff, former defense minister on your team in the room is hugely important. And then Gantz brought another asset. In Gantz's party, the number 3 in his party is a guy named Gadi Eisenkot. Eisenkot is, and I know Gantz, and I know Netanyahu, and I know Eisenkot, and I've spent time with them. And Eisenkot is another former chief of staff of the Israeli army, tremendously impressive and successful and experienced, and has worked closely with Netanyahu in the past. Obviously, they have deep divisions over domestic policy, but over this, they're unified. And so this is a big development, very, very encouraging. Most people think this is a mini miracle, maybe not even a mini one, right? It's certainly a huge answer to prayer, because we just didn't see a way to bring this country back together. People were talking about civil war here in recent months. And now over this horror show, the country is unifying. And now the question is, how do we move forward?
Amen. Right. Well, that's all good news. Let's talk quickly about segue to the United States, where I am. 2 developments today that I found very interesting. First off, the National Security Advisor, John Kirby, President Biden's national security advisor, held a briefing, and he said words to this effect, Joel. He said, Iran may have some fingerprints on what's happened because of their past support of Hamas, but we have, as he put it, no credible evidence that they had anything to do with the planning of this weekend's attacks or that they in any way funded them. Does that pass the smell test?
It doesn't. And just one point of clarification, Kirby is the spokesman for the National Security Council.
Correct. Right.
Not the advisor, but that's Jake Sullivan. But it doesn't pass the smell test. I was actually on Fox News this morning being asked that exact same question. And I said, look, this is actually insane to know that the world's worst terror state and the biggest sponsor of terror, who funds Hamas, arms Hamas, trains Hamas, directs Hamas, somehow didn't give this particular order that Hamas is doing this massive, sophisticated operation by itself, that it went rogue. It's literally insane to do that. And when I was asked why on Fox News, why would the administration do that, sort of preemptively exonerate the world's worst terror regime, I said there's 2 reasons. First is that President Biden gave $6 billion to the Iranian regime just a few weeks ago in a hostage transfer scenario. And I criticize this. Many people criticize Biden, saying if you give that much money to a terror regime, they're going to do more hostage taking and terrorism, not less. Seems self-evident, but it's not to the administration. So it seems clear that they're trying to make it seem like they have keep their fingerprints off this problem in the White House. But the other reason is because for 2 years the Biden administration has been begging, pleading, imploring the Iranian regime to get back in the what I would say is a highly flawed, very dangerous nuclear deal, and the Biden team doesn't want to tick off the Iranians by accusing them of something. But that is just there's a disconnect. Like on the one hand, when I watched President Biden's press conference yesterday,
Yes, yes.
it was very positive. I couldn't have asked him to say anything different. Like it was very warm, very positive, emotionally connected to Israel, super pro-Israel. If you watch that in isolation, you say this is a great pro-Israel president. The problem is, but he asked him about, well, didn't you give $6 billion to these terrorists who encourage and fund all these terrorists like Hamas? Like, aren't you somehow funding the very problem that? So that is the problem, and it's schizophrenic. What I said in my column today was that Biden and his team are playing a double game, and it's very, very dangerous. You can't be pro-Israel on the one hand and then give $6 billion to a terrorist regime, and then a few weeks later have a major terror ally of Iran massacre Jews and think that they're unconnected. That's just deeply faulty logic to the point of like incoherent.
It's absurd. The other event today that I thought we'd like to get your perspective on is there's a position in our country, people that are evangelicals from America watching know this, but others may not. Third in line to the presidency is Speaker of the House of Representatives. And that position has been vacant for over a week because Republicans, particularly conservatives, forced out a fellow named Kevin McCarthy as Speaker.
By the way,
Today there was
a group of conservatives. I think it was
eight.
Eight people. Eight. So yeah, so it's not even like the conference did it.
You're correct. But when the Republican conference met today and were looking to put together a new leader, the vote went for, although it's not final because 99 people voted against him, but the vote was for Steve Scalise, the House Majority Leader from Louisiana. And he has said many times that he is so pro-Israel. He said after these attacks that, let me reiterate, that Israel is the greatest ally of the United States and that we will not let anything happen other than fully back them. Is that, if he becomes the Speaker of the House, which appears likely unless there's some derailment, is that a good thing for Israel? Because without a Speaker of the House, no additional funds can be funneled to Israel or frankly anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a bizarre moment where Republicans might end up holding up the ability to provide emergency funding to Israel in our darkest hour. But I think they'll get this fixed, very, very shortly. Look, I've met Congressman Majority Leader Steve Scalise, but I don't really know him. I know he's a strong believer. I know he's very, very pro-Israel. He's very conservative. I like him a lot. I know better Congressman Jim Jordan, also a believer, also very, very conservative and super pro-Israel. So I don't see any daylight really on this issue between them. So I'm not taking a position on who should be, far be it from me here in Jerusalem to try to wade into, picking a U.S. speaker. But I think both would be very, very good for Israel, and the sooner the better, as I say.
All right, final issue, because I know our time is short, but I was very disturbed to see that there was a member of President Erdogan's Ministry of Education in Turkey. And mind you, Turkey is a NATO country, so supposedly part of an alliance that's designed to not be negative to the interests of NATO. This gentleman made a statement essentially threatening Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying, "You will be shot, someone will shoot you, and you will die." And everyone's up in arms about that. And I wonder if you think that's a disturbing thing that someone from a NATO country, even if he's a minor cabinet official, would feel that now is a time to issue a statement like that.
It's very disturbing, especially because Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been so hostile to Israel for so long. Now, in the last year or so, he has changed his tune. He says he wants his own normalization. Netanyahu was actually supposed to travel to Turkey, but had some health problems, and then now some other problems. Erdogan wants to come to Jerusalem. I don't buy it. I'm happy in the tactical short term if Turkey's not actively hostile. But there you go. There's a deputy education minister who's threatening to assassinate the prime minister of Israel. Like, where does that come from? It comes from Erdogan, because Erdogan has created this culture of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment, and you can't just get rid of it just because you want some tactical rapprochement. So it's a problem. I don't buy for a moment that the Erdogan actually wants a real normalization with Israel, like the Emiratis or the Bahrainis or the Moroccans or even the Saudis. I will say, by the way, I am concerned that the Saudi-Israeli peace deal is certainly stalled, and I don't know where that's going to go. I will say one other thing, just to wrap up, but not related to your question, but I just literally got off a nationwide U.S. Prayer call. It was very interesting. It was with U.S. pastor and evangelist Greg Laurie, who's a very dear friend and very much a very pro-Israel person. Out in Southern California, Bob Vanderplatz, who actually serves on, he's a evangelical social conservative leader based in Iowa. He actually serves on the All Israel News Advisory Board, and several others. And the main guest, aside from me, which I was surprised to be invited to share what was going on in Israel, but was Governor Ron DeSantis. I made it very clear that I was not on for a political purpose, and I wasn't there to endorse anybody. But I've met Governor DeSantis when he came to Israel. I asked him several questions at his press conference here in Jerusalem. I'm impressed with the governor, and he has a very, very strong pro-Israel record. Of course, he's running against the most pro-Israel president in all of American history, Donald Trump, and of course DeSantis is way behind. But he gave it, But I was encouraged to see one of the candidates wanting to have a prayer call. I don't think he set it into motion. I think it was these others. But the point is, I don't see a lot of daylight on almost anybody running for president on the Republican side, except businessman, CEO Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yes.
Most of them are very pro-Israel, and their records are stellar. Certainly, obviously, Mike Pence is, obviously Trump is, Nikki Haley, super pro-Israel, Senator Tim Scott, or Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, but Ramaswamy, I think he thinks of himself as pro-Israel. I don't think he actually is so pro-Israel. But anyway, my point is, in the midst of all the other things going on, I was glad that evangelical leaders were calling church leaders and lay people all over the country to pray. And I'd be willing to go on any prayer call with any major national or world leader who was participating with Christians to call people to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for victory over these barbarians, these savages who are cutting off the heads of babies and burning Jews alive in their homes and raping women. I mean, this is so ugly. It's so demonic. It's so satanic that it's going to take a spiritual war, not just a kinetic military war. So anyway, that's just something I literally just got off of that call. But I'll also say that our family knows people that are now getting wounded, and even one that has now died, a soldier that has died in
so sorry.
conflict. And I think I said yesterday, it's Israel's darkest hour. I certainly said it on the prayer call. I think I said it to you yesterday, and it is. And the darkness is very real. So I just want to encourage people that there's been a bright spot today, the National Emergency Unity Government. That's a good thing.
Yes.
To me, it's a big answer to prayer, and one that most people thought wasn't even possible. So let's use that to bolster and fortify our faith. We serve a prayer hearing and a prayer answering God, a God who loves to answer prayer, and a God who loves to do wonders. And we need Him to move very, very powerfully and show us things that we can easily get discouraged and think, well, I know God could do it, but He probably won't. Let's not have that attitude. The book of James tells us we have not because we ask not, meaning ask God. We don't ask God, so we have not because we ask not, or because we ask with impure motives. So let's ask God to purify our motives but let's ask big things of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Well, we hope that he will move in that direction, but we also, to use the Hebrew word tikva, we feel that that's guaranteed that he will. So we know that God is on the side of Israel. We know that God will always have Israel in his protective arms. And we so enjoy the time with you, Joel, to have the perspective that you give us. And I just would say to people in closing that if you go to All Israel News 3-4 times a day, you're going to see breaking news, just like what Joel mentioned at the top of our conversation, where he said they broke the story about the brand new unity government. There's so many other things that happen throughout the day, and we would appreciate to throw in a little request that since we can always use financial support, it would be great if you could see your way clear to support All Israel News as well. But Joel, your perspective and your thinking is just so on target. We thank you for your time and hope everyone will join us again soon.
Thank you, Tom. Great to be with you. Great to have you on this team. Keep praying for us here in Jerusalem. God bless you.
Yes.